Okay, welcome everyone to our online training for PRINTeL. First, I will give you some information on the course and more on the technical aspect. So I think the central point for the training, for all information, the links to all sessions, info on the Blackboard Collaborate platform we're on, and the course material is our website. Here you can find a program for all the days and accordingly the course material that will be used during those days. You can find the full program there and all links specifically to every session. So every session, today, tomorrow, Thursday, will have a specific link to a specific online session. You can all find them there. So please use those specific links for every day. And in the next slide, I will give you a short info introduction on the platform. So at KU Leuven, we use Blackboard Collaborate as our online teaching platform. I think it's a bit the same as most of the other teaching platforms, but some guidelines we would like to share with you is that or maybe some basic things about the interface is that at the bottom of your screen, you see 4 icons. You see the little person on the left. That's my status and settings. And if you click on that, you will get a small menu that will give you the option to leave the session, but also to give feedback to us. So for example, if there are some questions will be asked, you can use that screen to answer with agree, disagree, maybe how you feel, if you're going too fast or too slow, stuff you can indicate there. So this will be used in the rest of the training when we ask small yes or no or agree, disagree questions. And this is a way to quickly share your ideas or your opinion about a topic. So please use that if it's asked by our teachers. The second icon, as we all know from other platforms, is to to disable or enable your microphone. The third item is to share your video. And the fourth item, the little man with its hand in the air, you can use that to raise your hand. So if you have a question, don't just enable your mic, but raise your hand, and the person presenting or teaching at that moment will come back to you. On the right, you have the purple arrow. If you open that up, you get your control panel. The things you can do there is the chat icon. So if you have questions, just put them in the chat. We will come back to them as soon as possible, or maybe together we can find an answer during the presentation. On the other hand, there will be moments when this chat will be used in the training, so you can find it there. The second icon with the persons on it is the attendee list. So there you can see everybody. In the future, when we ask you a disagree or an agree question, here you can see all the answers of the people. Next to their name, you will see what they have answered. And then there's the little wheel in the end. It's the settings here. If you have problems with your microphone or your video, you can always go there and check if everything's working correctly. So a few short guidelines maybe. If you have a question, put it in the chat or raise your hand and we will try to answer it. Second, disable your microphone. We will ask you to enable it if we need a vocal answer. Also maybe disable your camera just to diminish the network usage. Then I've already shown you the little white screen, the My Status menu. So you can find it at the bottom next to your disable microphone. This will be used to ask you questions and you can answer them through there. And then the purple arrow will open up your control panel. So if you have questions, technical issues, just ask them in the chat and I will try to solve them for you. And I hope you have a nice training today.
Okay, thank you, Wouter, for this introduction. Okay, good morning, good afternoon for some of you maybe, and welcome back in this training here offered by KU Leuven in this special times of a pandemic. It's unfortunate we cannot see you here in our beautiful city and beautiful university, but you might remember or have good remembrance of what you have been doing here a little while ago. And we will try to mimic this experience as much as possible in the online environment of our university. Having you here on board means that you already managed to find your way here. And like Wouter explained, we will be using Blackboard Collaborate with all the features that are available. And I see already people trying out these features. Maybe it's a good start indeed to use the chat function and say something like a welcome to each other. We might know each other from the time that you were in Leuven, maybe not. If you're new to this group, you can maybe introduce yourself a little bit. But I invite you to use the chat and to say a welcome message to all of us. I will do that as well. You remember, like Wouter said, it is the pink arrow that you have to press at the very right corner and then choose the chat function to enter a message. I invite everyone now. Okay. I see many of you have found the chat function and are very familiar with that option. It's a bit difficult to check if everyone has used the chat function, but 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. Yep. Okay. It seems to work. Great. Yeah. Okay. So like Wouter mentioned, this is one way that you could use during this training to raise your voice, let's say, and to ask questions or to maybe comment on what you are hearing or what you are feeling about this training. Feel free to use this chat function as much as possible. We will try and do our very best to make sure that we take into account your comments. Okay, it's also, yeah, you remember that the first training in Leuven here was about active learning and how we could support active learning with digital tools. Well, this is now one way that we could illustrate how things are going and how this could work in a fully online environment. So let's make use of all the features that are available to us and try to do our best to get a right experience of all these digital tools. Okay, and talking about digital tools, I think I would like to invite you to use Mentimeter. You might remember that we used Mentimeter here in Leuven, and I would like to to let you use this Mentimeter again. You can go to the website mentimeter.com, register yourself. And then use this code, which is mentioned here, and then try to answer the question that I raised there. Can you all do that? If you experience problems, you might use the chat function. I hope it's working. I see one of you managed to answer the question already, but we are 20 people, so I would like to see at least 20 answers here. Oh, yes. Yeah. Arushak, thank you for mentioning this. I made indeed a mistake. It should be menti.com and not mentimeter.com. Sorry. Yeah, you're right. That was a mistake in my slides. Okay. Let's see if it doesn't show. Oh yeah. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Now it's showing. Seems to work. I see 24 answers already. Okay. Yeah, Nino, you should be able to see the answers if you look in Blackboard Collaborate. There we are presenting the answers live. I hope you can go back to Blackboard Collaborate and see it in your screen there. Yes, Salome, it's indeed. I made it possible that you could enter multiple times things that you wanted to share with us. So if someone else also wants to resubmit or submit another tool or app, then you can still do that. Mm-hmm. Okay. So maybe I can stop it here. I will, sorry. Voting is closed. Let's see how that. Oh, oops! It's also disappeared here. Yeah. Sorry, I was too quick in stopping the presentation. But you all have seen that well, there was a variety of tools that was presented by you. I was happy to, well, happy. I was seeing a lot of people that used new tools like Zoom and other video conferencing or online tools. That was nice. Of course, we were forced to in a way. If you've never had an opportunity to use these tools, now we could not escape from using them for sure. But I was also happy to see that some of you mentioned that you were also using techniques like the flipped classroom, as we also introduced that concept last time when we were all here in Leuven. I think that indeed in a time like this, the flipped classroom model could show its value. We in a way also tried to apply this concept for this course in the sense that we think that by offering the course in Google Drive with all the material already provided as sort of yeah, preparation that you could do for this training, that this is also a flipped classroom model. So we invited you to read this material, or at least to scan the material a little bit, so that you are aware of what we are going to present to you during this 3 days. Maybe I can just explain a little bit about the program we have in mind. Let's see if I can share my PowerPoint again. Yeah, I'm not sure. Share now. Yep. Okay, so we have in mind that today we will focus very much on what we call digital competences. And that is because due to what we have experienced in Corona times, that it is very clear that as a teacher, as a researcher, as a scholar in general, we need to have specific competences to cope with, let's say, the fully online digital world in which we were thrown during this pandemic. And we will elaborate a little bit more on what kind of competences are we talking about, how do these competences relate to teaching and learning, especially. Are there any frameworks that we could use? How can we enhance, how can we improve, how can we grow in these competences? That will be the subject of today. And the subject of tomorrow will be more on assignments in the digital world and assessment, and the reason for that is if we talk about competences, then we would like to achieve certain levels, certain types of competences. And at a certain point, we also have to measure where are we in our journey towards more competences. Not only us as teachers, but also our students. And that means that we will focus a little bit more on how can we do proper assessment in this new digital world. That will be the subject of tomorrow. And on Thursday, we would like then, well, in the meantime, between Tuesday and Thursday, there is one day where there is no lectures, that's Wednesday. And we will give you some homework to do, a little assignment where you could also apply what we have learned on Monday and Tuesday about competences and assessment in your own situation. Within your own context, maybe your course, maybe a program in which you're involved, maybe your university in general, that we will explain a little bit more tomorrow, how to set up that assignment. And on Thursday, we will allow you to further discuss on what you have been doing on your own assignment, first in smaller groups, and then in plenum, we will try to share the ideas and to discuss further more in depth on all these aspects. Yes, Arushak, we will provide the recordings. That's actually mandatory in the PRINTeL project. So we will make sure that the recordings will be available. Okay, so the program is today competences, tomorrow assessment, and on Thursday reflection and feedback discussion. Okay, so getting introduced, I will just show a couple of slides to make an introduction to what Kristen will tell. If we talk about teaching and learning in the 21st century, then there is a shift in paradigm. I mean, if you look, and I think I could show you the next slide, when my parents were studying, and yeah, there was, my mother was a school teacher. And the way that she was teaching long time ago, that was that she was in front of the class and the pupils in her class were listening to her and were doing what she was saying as a teacher and asking them to do. So that was the very well-known system where there is a teacher in front and the students are sitting in the classroom. But then when I was a student, well, it was not in the 90s, it was rather in the 80s, there was already a movement going on that we as students were more or less stimulated to be more active, and there was already some group work. For instance, in the labs, we were doing lab sessions with 2-3 students together. So there was already a sort of more active way of teaching and learning going on. But if you really look at how learning is happening at this moment, then there is no structure anymore, or there is a tendency that the structures of a teacher and students and a structure of learning is happening in a classroom, is happening on campus. That is no longer the case. All these walls, all these structures are broken down, and learning is actually now happening everywhere and at different times. When you're walking in the park, maybe you could learn about the birds that you see. When you're sitting on the bus from home to work or from home to school, you might listen to a podcast and learn while you're there. So there is a lot of opportunities nowadays where we could learn, when we could learn, and how we could learn. So it's not only listening to the teacher anymore, it could happening between the students and so on. So there is a whole new landscape that we experience when it comes to teaching and learning nowadays. And that is then asking the question, do we need, as teachers, new competences? Do we need, as teachers, to be much more aware of what is happening in that real world, in that digital world? What is how our students are familiar with the new technologies? Maybe is there for us as a teacher a reason that we should change our role from sage on the stage to guide on the side? I think I mentioned that when we were in Leuven as well. Our roles as teachers are changing, and that also means that our competences as teachers will change. Does that mean that we have to go so far that we are like a fully digitalized professor or teacher in a classroom? I'm not sure. Well, I'm sure it's not. And that is what we will try to explain to you during this training, that indeed we have to change our roles. Indeed, we have to acquire new competences as a teacher, but we should not exaggerate and going completely in the other direction and make a computerized or digitized version of ourselves as a teacher. I don't think that this is what we would like to bring as a message. I think that it's finding the right balance between what kind of new competences do we think we need, and how do we get these new competences at a comfortable level so that we could feel happy enough in that new digitized world as a teacher, communicating with the students of today. And I think that that this is the whole subject of today. How do we define these new competences? Why are they important, and how do we acquire new competences? I think that is then the subject of today. That was my introduction. I think that I will now give the floor to Chris to start with his explanation on competences. Maybe just one remark of practical reason, and that is that the whole training is scheduled for 4 hours, but we will include enough breaks so that you don't have to get bored, or that there is time for taking a coffee, even a lunch, and then I think that whenever you need a short break, let us know, and then we can take that into account. Okay. So that was my introduction. I will stop sharing this set of slides and now give the floor to Chris to continue.
So, hello everyone, good morning.
Good morning.
So, let's start with the first presentation. And here I'm starting with the question, is online teaching and learning here to stay? I think yes, and it's a challenge for the future, as Wim emphasized before. In the previous presentations, in the previous PRINTeL TOT courses, we were exploring new methods for electronically supported teaching. We also have had some practical experience in teaching methods, and we did some exercises, and we had some words about MOOCs as, let's say, the newest version of online teaching, where you have a full autonomous learning of all the learners. What are we going to discuss today? First of all, teachers' competences and capabilities for computer-supported teaching. So it means that we are going to see what we need to learn to use these new methods in the digital era. So we will talk about the digital competence framework, that is Wim's part, later on this morning, and tomorrow we will talk about the assessment. This presentation will deal with online teaching and learning, so full online teaching and learning as a new standard in the period of pandemics. Then we will talk some requirements of teaching methodologies and strategies. And we will tell you something about how the tsunami of the pandemic forced our lecturers, and then I mean lecturers, the man or woman who is standing in front of the classroom, to change their role into online instructors. And then the last point I want to emphasize is how generalized using the computer supporting methods invokes the new additional competence and skills from teachers and learners. And I emphasize it's not only the skills from the teachers, but also the skills that the learners have to acquire. And third of all, there is a third party also in it. These are the university managers, the deans and the rectors. So let's have a look what it is. So this presentation is focusing on how also the PRINTeL participants, quite unexpectedly, got a chance of using their newly acquired knowledge and skills. Is it a chance? Well, it's an opportunity to use that because this time is really exceptional. So these are the 4 points we are going to talk about in this presentation. So first, the unexpected 2020 challenge of online teaching and learning. Then where are all the lectures now? What are they are doing? The online teaching urges for new teacher competences, and online teaching impacts the university's operational organization. Some history of the 2020 year. In January, we had the first signs of the spread of the COVID-19 infections in China. And it was only since the month of February that we had the first severe outbreaks in Italy. We make a jump to March, and then we see in our country, in Belgium, we already had the first social restrictions, and we had the first lockdown in the month of April. First lockdown means that all Belgian schools and universities were closed, and they had to switch to online learning and teaching, except for primary school where there were some minor exceptions. In the month of June, we thought everyone had been cured, and we could switch to a weaker kind of restrictions. So part of the people went on holidays, were going to traveling abroad, and the result was that in September and October, the first new signs of the second wave were already starting. So in October, we had new restrictions in our country and a start of a second lockdown in the month of November. Second lockdown in higher education means that all teaching was going online, and distance learning was the only way we could use. This is still unchanged till today. Some observations about this period of online teaching. First of all, the whole discussion which was going on until before the first lockdown about the needs of online teaching and learning, this at once became irrelevant. It was not necessary to talk about that anymore because we simply had the only way of teaching was online. Then the online teaching and learning replaced completely face-to-face teaching from one day to another. Practical training sessions, that was the big problem, especially in the programs for engineering, for example, or for chemistry, where there were no more lab exercises or technical trainings. One big observation is that the teaching staff, methodically and didactically, was not sufficiently prepared in most cases. The educational support by the lecturers, by the teachers, is too much reduced in online teaching and learning. So the physical contact is lost, and the electronic support for replacing it was lacking. The lack of electronic equipment and material, the lack of adequate IT and organizational support became apparent in many education institutions. After a while of teaching, we are coming to the examination periods, and then it was clear that the assessment methods that currently were used are inappropriate for online teaching and learning. And that has been a very big problem, for example, in the month of June in our universities, because online examination, online assessment is not very practically useful in most situations, and it is not safe in quite a lot of situations. After all, summarizing, online teaching and learning means that there is a much heavier workload and a much heavier study load, and that is causing psychological burden as well for teachers as for students. And then there were raised some questions. First, question the online engagement for teachers and institutes. There are some big concerns. Is that prepared? Is that well prepared? Yes or no? Resourcing. Where to get all the learning materials and how to make it. In the PRINTeL project, we already discussed that. But the PRINTeL project is just a very limited of universities that were involved with. The assessment methods have to be updated to meet the actual learning outcomes. And there I emphasize that indeed we have to make a clear link between the assessment method and the assessment content with the learning outcomes that were asked from the students. The teacher capabilities. Main question, are the teachers in command of their electronic tools or are they commanded by the electronic tools? The quality of the online learning experience is quite low. There have been a lot of publications when starting online teaching and learning, and these publications all are pointing into the same direction. Quality is lower than what we have had before. Then the impact of the university lockdown on students is one of the major problems today. The well-being of students and also the well-being of teachers is seriously hampered by the social isolation of both groups of people. Then there is an urgent need for teachers' adaptability. There are two questions in that. First, how to teach methodically and how to achieve the professional capacity for online teaching. So that's a matter of training. Then the questions concerning the continuing relationship between technology and the process of teaching and learning. Are the aims and the values of the new teaching and learning methodologies and strategies indeed clear for everyone in our educational system? Then we have the organizational and financial issues, and of course that's the main concern for the university management level. Striking shortcomings related to online teaching and learning, first at the teachers level. The teachers are methodologically not prepared and are missing the required teaching tools, so as well as the materials and the support. We have the lack of electronic equipment in quite a lot of institutions. We have shortcomings that result in lower quality of teaching. And we have the online teaching results that are resulting in a heavier workload for teachers who still have to prepare all their new teaching materials. At teaching at students level, the initial fake holiday feeling of not going to the classroom has been gone very, very soon. And the study load they experienced seems to be severely increased. The volume of the learning content of face-to-face teaching is too large and not adapted for online teaching and learning. So we have to reduce the amount of materials, the amount of information, because spreading it in online teaching takes more time and more efforts. The study methods of students are not adapted to online teaching and learning. And that starts already with the time management and the preparedness for assessments. The new assessment methods are unknown and are not adapted to the way that we are teaching today. So these are some shortcomings we have to deal with in following days. Prelim conclusions related to the introduction of online teaching and learning. First of all, teachers have to be retrained or updated for the online teaching and learning methodology. The students should be retrained too, so we need some information to transfer at the beginning of our courses, our online courses. The university management needs to face the logistically problems that are coming in with the new teaching methodologies, and at last also they have to adapt their strategies. The learning content has to be adapted and the amount of learning materials reduced, and the assessment methods need to be adapted. So these are some preliminary conclusions on the online teaching and learning. Most striking observations. We have no more lectures in overcrowded auditorium, but we also have no more individual face-to-face instruction or coaching. Even coaching has to be done online. But on the other hand, online teaching doesn't mean that we just use a video of a lecture or just have a talking head on a screen. It is also not sending the students periodic emails with tasks to be performed for assessment. So there are a lot of things we have to change. I mention here a slide from a publication of Varvel, which has been published in 2007, where we see the connection between the deep level of learning and the teaching and learning modus that we are using. So the classroom teaching, the computer-enhanced classroom teaching, tutor-enhanced online learning, and the independent online learning. What is done, or what is the pandemic imperative? We have to switch to tutor-enhanced online learning. What have we done with PRINTeL? We have started with computer-enhanced classroom teaching. So there is some discrepancy, and it means that the pandemic imperative is bringing in much more difficulties than we had started with our PRINTeL objectives. Shall this future be the same? Well, online teaching and learning, I think it will be changing after a while to blended learning. Blended learning in a well-balanced mix, and we have to use several computer-supported teaching methods. Then there shall be a clear connection to the adapted learning outcomes for computer supporting teaching. So we have to switch to new learning outcomes, targeting on well-defined competences to achieve. So first we have to define the competences that we want to reach with our students. We will include interactive video sessions and time for guided learning in contradiction to or opposite to self-directed learning that we have to stimulate in every case. And all these things have to be done by, or will be done by coached and will be assessed by motivated and experienced teachers. So, what are the new expectations that our students are asking to our online teaching and learning instructors. First, they have to become tech savvy, so they have to be familiar with the IT technology. They have to be good managers. It means effective course management and instruction. We have to communicate our high expectations towards the students before the start of our courses. They have to be good instructors, so it means they need good course familiarity, thorough preparations, and they have to be good course administrators. So they need to offer good availability, almost continuous availability, because when switching to online learning, time restrictions are taken away. They have to be good communicators, and they have to give prompt feedback on questions of the students. They have to provide ample documentation, and they have to do correct record keeping. Another new role is that of coach and tutor. So they have to encourage the active learning, to respect diverse talents and ways of learning, ways and speed of learning. They have to develop reciprocity and cooperation among students. So peer-to-peer learning is becoming more important. And last but not least, they have to emphasize the time on task. It means how much time you can spend for a given task. And they have to teach their students about time management. So it means that, corresponding to previous slide, we have new instructors' roles. And if we see, new roles require new competences. And with these new competences, we can do new tasks. But new tasks require new skills for doing these tasks. I give you this reference. It is Varvel, 2007, and in his article, Master Online Teacher Competences, this author is giving more than 100 different teacher competences, and he makes a difference between the core competences and which are necessary for giving online teaching and learning, and exemplary, so that is the best of the learners. He makes a difference between the knowledge indicators and the performance indicators. And that is the whole subdivision of all these competences according to the different roles that are to be taken by these new supervisors, by these new instructors. So here you have the reference. Please have a look at these different lists of competences. It's a very long list, but it doesn't mean that you have to become, let's say, the one who is fulfilling all these competences. We come back to that. The most needed competences and skills are in this list. First, interpersonal communication, the planning of the course, the collaboration and teamwork skills. Oral communication skills are very important. The writing skills, organizational skills, feedback skills, knowledge of the distance education field, knowledge on the basic technology, and last but not least, access to the right technology that we need for teaching. That's A slide from Varvel, the article of 2007, where he's presenting the instructional outcomes from 0 to the very best against the number of competences. So the more competences you have for teaching, the more instructional outcomes you can realize. That's the theoretical line. In practice, it's not a line, it's not a straight line. It's a kind of hysteresis curve. So it means that when you have a limited number of competences, because this axis is inversed, so half the way, 50% of competences is already reaching more than 50% of the instructional outcomes. If we look now at our PRINTeL program, then we see that we can say that most of our participants dispose on quite a lot of competences. And that means that they reach already, or can reach potentially, they can reach a lot of these instructional outcomes. That is the advantage of the PRINTeL course. The online teaching and learning relies on the academic, organizational, and IT support. So that's the third partner. Besides of the students, the teachers, we have the organization of the university. They have to answer to the teachers' needs, the different forms of support. They have to provide in-service training and retraining. In service, it means while during the working hours. Academic and strategic support, the strategic plan, the strategic development plan of the university have to be reduced or reviewed, and it means teachers have to be fit in this new strategy, and therefore the university also has to provide some human resource support. At students level, there is a big need to a well-developed and functional electronic learning platform to realize all the communication between the university, the teachers, and the students. There is a big need in organizational and planning support, and students ask for experienced and competent faculty teaching staff. So it means that online teaching and learning is bringing our teachers in a position that they have to find new roads for the futures, for the right direction, to take the right direction to the future. Answer to the primary question, is online teaching and learning here to stay? Yes, it is. But it will be in a mode of blended learning, taught by experienced, competent, and motivated staff, framed in a well-taught strategy, and last but not least, allowing to turn computer-supported teaching and learning into a full online teaching and learning when urged by environmental conditions like this pandemic. So we will conclude this introductory presentation by having a few questions where you can answer yes or no. Just read the question, and then you have a few seconds to open your My Status part at the left side in the lower part of your screen to answer that question. So the first question is, did you experience during the past year in your university a full lockdown period imposing full online teaching for a longer time, minimum 2 weeks? So please answer yes or no. So I'm still missing some answers. Nine people up to now have said yes, and one said no. So most of you had some experience with full online teaching and learning. Second question. Did you feel prepared for the online teaching and learning? Yes or no? Please use your status circle to answer.
Yeah. Maybe Chris, can I intervene here? Just to make
Yeah.
clear, in the bottom of the page on Blackboard Collaborate, you have in the middle the very left icon is a portrait picture that you could click on. And if you click on that, then you will see a possibility to answer agree or disagree. Of course, you can still use the chat, but preferably you use this item on the bottom of your screen. Thank you.
So most of you
mean
were
green?
prepared.
Answers.
Yeah, okay.
Green color.
Yeah, sure. Svetlana, you want to say something?
Mean green color should appear, yes, if we answer yes.
Yeah.
Yes, indeed.
Indeed. Indeed.
The no, red, yes?
Yeah,
No
exactly.
is red. Okay, let's turn to the third question. Do you agree that good university teaching requires at least a major part means more than 50% of face-to-face teaching? So please, can I have your answer? So I see that most participants say, yes, we need at least a major part, but it is not completely shared by all of you. So we can discuss that later on, how much of time we need to face-to-face learning. Okay, it depends on the subject too, that's correct. It can explain the red vote. The fourth question, do you agree that blended learning and active learning are a must in higher education? So it seems we had a good decision in launching the PRINTeL project. Christine, you say no, it's not a must. Is that correct? Okay, let's switch to the fifth question. Did the PRINTeL training contribute in a positive way for being prepared for electronically supported teaching and learning or online teaching and learning? So I must conclude that almost everyone is satisfied by the PRINTeL trainings that we organized. So, thank you for listening to this first presentation. If there are some questions, we are prepared to answer these. I look at the chats. Okay, thank you for your attention. I think we can have now a few minutes just to have a little drink, and then we start with the second part of the presentation.
I suggest we take 15 minutes, Chris. Is that okay?
Okay. Yeah, okay.
So we start in 15 minutes again. Maybe Arushak, you were asking a question about the watermark in the slides. Well, there is actually two watermarks. If you look at slide here, there is the 1425 in the key. That is referring to the start of our university. The University of Leuven is originally started in 1425. That means that we are now heading towards our 600th anniversary. And the other watermark you might have seen, is on the other slides. That is actually the stamp of the university, and that refers to a statue of Mother Mary that can be seen in the big church in the center of the university, and that is a statue that is symbolizing what we call the well of wisdom, sedes sapientiae, and that is or it's not the well, it's the chair of wisdom, let's say. And that is a statue that is also symbolizing the university, the link with our Catholic roots, and the link with the city of Leuven. So that is the explanation of the watermarks you might see in some of our slides.
Perhaps it's important to add some things to that, because at the start of the university in 1425, the main areas in which there was been teaching, it was medical science, it was botany for the pharmaceutical part of the program, and it was mainly theology. And that's, for example, of that is the origin of the Sedes Sapientiae. Mm-hmm. So it was a Catholic institution. But to add to that, Leuven is not the oldest university of Europe. I think one is older, it's Bologna, isn't it?
Oh, there is more that are older. Salamanca is also older. Bologna is certainly one of the oldest. But yeah, we are amongst the oldest universities in Europe.
Okay, now we have a break. Yep. See you in a minute.
Yeah, okay. See you later.
So, welcome back again for the second part of the presentation. Why will we focus on competences in this presentation? In previous presentation, I emphasized the new role of online instructors and learners coaches. The meaning is that we are going to high performance in these new roles. And for reaching this high performance, we need additional competences. And that means that we need training and retraining of teaching staff in teaching and learning in a computer technology environment. That means that our teachers shall become learners again in this aspect of teaching. Second, what are competences and how to acquire them? And third, what is competence-directed learning? Learning and teaching, of course. Competence-based learning is not new at all. The first publications about competence in job performance improvement are done by or made by Taylor in 1914, and he was dealing with training of people in the motor construction companies in the early 1900s, where he had to retrain the blacksmiths to assemble cars in the Ford Motor Company. But also, CBL was introduced approximately 1910 in primary education by Maria Montessori, and that was a physician who studied the way how to develop the competences in the young pupils in primary education. And then the question is, how about higher education? It takes a very long time until the start of the Bologna movement in Europe and the ECTS credit transfer system, when in higher education they started to talk about higher education competences. Short history of teaching methodology. In the ancient Greek period, the philosophers like Socrates were teaching individually while walking around. And then we should jump to the Middle Ages, where we see that monks were copying old books. And in the Frankish emperor in 760, 780, decided that all boys, had to go to the monastery school to learn to read the Bible, to memorize it. And it was only in the 17th century that village schools started using, and they were using slates and pens for writing, because paper and feathers were very expensive. It took until the 18th century that boys and girls could learn reading, writing, and arithmetics to prepare them for learning a craft. And then we come very close, the 19th century, then we see that blackboard and chalk and writing with feather and ink on paper became quite normal. But be aware that using a slate and pen, I have been doing that in the early 1950s in the primary school, so it was not banned at all. Early 20th century, there we see that the first teaching aids, which are wall charts and letterboards, were used. 1960s, it was the time of my secondary school. We had some films, we had diapositives, and overhead projectors that were used. The 1980s, it was the beginning of my teaching career, the introduction of video beamers. The 1990s was the period that teachers started using laptops and PowerPoints. And it is only since the early 2000s that online learning and MOOCs are coming into the market. What about the organization of the higher education in Europe today? It's still common old school. It is time-based with an academic year comprising 60 credits in the ECTS system. And these ECTS credits, they are defined in terms of study load. Not the workload of the teachers, but the study load of students. And the qualifications are being defined in the national qualification frameworks of every country in the European system. What about assessment? We still are using an end of year or end of term examination system, which is leading to a pass-failure system. You have to pass to start the next academic year in your training. And then the question is, do we really need this kind of teaching system? And the real answer is no, there are alternatives for this way of organization. And we could use computer-supported active learning and competency-based education or competency-based learning, which is empowering learners to focus on mastery of valuable skills and knowledge and learning at their own pace. And that's in contradiction with the annual system that we know today. So what is the learner's view? Before, the learner had to master a broad domain of science and knowledge. In competence-based learning, it is becoming prepared and trained people for a productive and performing life in a continuously changing society. I emphasize becoming prepared and trained for a performing life, because performance is the question we're discussing later. The teacher's view, before it was creation of knowledge and the transfer of knowledge and skills and developing attitudes in the mind of the students. With CBL, we are offering the students the best way for acquiring competences for adequate functioning in today's society. Adequate functioning, in fact, is the same as performing. So, while active learning is giving a big push towards autonomous learning, CBL brings autonomous learning, but brings also a 180-degree shift in teaching and learning. And what is that 180-degree shift? It is turning from teacher-centered learning to student-centered learning, because students need personalized development, because they need to become competent participants in modern life. That's the aim of learning towards competences. So CBL is learning towards the acquirency of competences. What is a competence? It is the ability of a person to do a job properly. That's the most general definition that you have. What is competency? Competency is a set of defined behaviors that provide a structured guide enabling the identification, evaluation, and development of behavior. Development of behavior is competency. I know that when competence is used in the plural form, people say competence, but quite a lot of people will use competencies. So there is some confusion about that terminology. I try to use competences in the most simple form. What are these competences? These are characteristics that are linked to an individual person that must demonstrate to be effective in a job, a function, a role, or a task or a duty. And these characteristics include technical knowledge and skills, job-relevant behavior, and motivation. Technical knowledge and skills are the easiest to see, to measure. Job-relevant behavior and motivation are more linked to competency. So competences include the transfer of knowledge, what a person knows, the skills, what a person is doing, and attitudes, how a person behaves in a functional job. And what competences have to be acquired by the students. In higher education, each study program shall be based on a thorough study of competences that a graduate will need for adequate functioning in society in a specific function. So you cannot start making a course, making a program, without studying the competences that will be needed in the job that is corresponding to that education that you're offering. Competences can be measured through learning outcomes. So we have the competences. These three parts are part of the competences, and we can measure these competences by measuring the learning outcomes. So competence is a quality that is developed by and belongs to the student or to a person. A learning outcome is a measurable result of a learning experience. That is what you have been describing in your ECTS course descriptions for your courses. It's a measurable result of a learning experience. So learning outcomes are not properties which are unique to a student. These are simply statements that we are using to measure whether the student developed the competences to the required level. What are these competences now in practice? We are looking at two types of competences. First, the generic competences, general competences that will be required by all professionals, irrespective of their specialized activity. And we have domain-specific competences, which are quite specific to each specialized area of professional activity. So while these are competences that are mainly dealing with attitudes, the domain-specific competences are linked to knowledge and skills. Let's have a look at the generic competences in more detail. When we are talking about generic competences, we have three types of generic competences. It means we have instrumental generic competences. Instrumental generic competences are the competences that we need to do something. We have interpersonal generic competences, which are defining how we are performing our interpersonal relations in a job, in a working environment. And we have systemic generic competences. That is how we can follow the strategy of that group, of that profession. Some examples. Here you see the examples of instrumental generic competences. And the ones that I have printed in bold, like creative thinking, systemic thinking, practical thinking, are the ones that are most appreciated by the people in practice. It means that is needed for students when doing a job. But that's also needed when teachers are doing their job. So these are things that we definitely, these are core competences that we have to develop. When we look at the interpersonal genetic competences, so these are defining our social interactions. So interpersonal communication, teamwork, transparency, ethical sense. Again, these printed in bold are the most important ones. The systemic genetic competences are what we make of our job, of our function. So that's creativity, objectives-based managing, leadership, achievement orientation, innovation, loyalty, and these things more. So these are the 3 types of genetic competences. If we now look at the subject-specific competences, these are competences performed in a specific subject area, and these are typical for that subject area. For example, if we look at the ability to demonstrate knowledge of research techniques and technology, that is one of the topics, that is one of the competences that is required for every master student. They have to be able to demonstrate their knowledge and to do research when they graduate. The ability to use research techniques and technology, again, is one of the basic master student competences. So I come back to that slide from the previous presentation where we had the roles. Now we know what the competencies are, and these we need for doing the task. Doing the tasks, and therefore they need the skills. Look at this slide. You have that slide in your literature list in that PDF. Now you can't read it. I agree. That's why I take a part out of it, and that's a detail. So here in that slide, you see the teachers and the trainers' skills and abilities, and lower on you see that you have the specific abilities and the technical abilities that are corresponding to that. So if you want to look at that in a greater detail, please go to that literature reference that you have in the literature list. But it's not only the teachers who have to adapt to new competences, to new tools, to use new tools. And for example, for students in electronically supported learning, there are lots of tools available, a lot of apps where they can do these actions that correspond to these apps, but they still have to learn. So it means that if you want to have a detailed view on all these apps, please turn to this publication in your publication list with this for this presentation. So training, not only for teachers, also for students. How are we measuring the degree of that competence? First, Generic competence is measured by ego resilience, reflecting the flexibility and ability to solve development problems. It's a big word. This means that it's very hard to test whether generic competences have been acquired. It's just by discussion, by observing the people, that you can make it, or they mention that competence. Domain-specific competences can be measured by school achievement, and these are the learning outcomes. The learning outcomes are measuring the domain-specific competences. These generic competences are being measured by general assessment procedures. Why do we need to acquire these competences? To come to performancy. And performancy is that what we are having or doing in performance development and performance management, which is the case in professional environments, but also in the university at the level of the teacher's performance. At the individual level, focus on competences enables people to take a proactive role in their own developments. So that is what you personally have to do, acquire competences to guarantee your individual development. At the organizational level, focus on competency in performance development enables to align individuals in the values and strategy of the working environment. So it means that in an organization, performance is based on competency. We should know that in performance development, personality and outcomes-based approaches provide no constructive developmental focus on behaviors. So it is not a measure of how we reached our teaching results that is making us a good performer in your task, in your role. Approaches that recognize the need to provide individuals with feedback on job responsibilities contribute to performance development. What does it mean? It means that the organization, the university, or the teacher towards the student needs to give feedback on functioning responsibilities and in the acquiring of competences, and that contributes to performance development. So we need personalized learning and continuous assessment and coaching of the learners. That is raising the question of summative, the way that we are using our assessment now. Assessment in universities is a summative type of assessment. So at the end, we see if the students have learned what we wanted them to learn. But we need to test them continuously during their development to have these, to measure the progress in acquiring the competences. So what we see is that the use of competences has been a key success for many universities and organizations that are undergoing rapid and dramatic changes. Rapid and dramatic changes is, for example, pandemic and turning to online teaching and learning in the university organization. That was all big theory. And I already mentioned Farvel, which was enumerating over 100 competences that we need to have. But is that needed that we one by one are acquiring that competences. No, the key is that now what we have to do is focus on a limited number of competences, for example, the top 8 or 10, but there is no restriction in that number. And we acquire these competences, these critical or core competences, and that is our competency framework or competency model that we have to set up for each of us. In that competency framework of 8 or 10 competences, we just have to work out 3 to 5 of that competences to bring up our performance in our job. So pick 3 or 5 competences that are important strengths based on the goals that you have as a teacher to continue to build up. Very important is to realize that competency-based learning is imposed in higher education by today's social requirements. So it is society who is demanding performance of the people, of professional active people. It is society who is wanting us to have these competences, and it means that society becomes a very important stakeholder in stakeholder in higher education. So we have the stakeholder, the student, the stakeholder, the teacher, and the stakeholder, the society. Very important to that respect is that degree programs today still are designed on the basis of tradition on one hand and the available resources. So it means that they are input-based and staff-centered. We are teaching this course because that professor is in our university a renowned person in that field of study. But student-centered programs require a change of mindset of the academic staff that is responsible for designing and delivering degree programs. That means that the degree programs should be developed and organized in view of the desired results, in view of the competences that students have to acquire. And that requires training and retraining. So another way of wording this, the outcomes of a learning process should meet the aims of the program. And the outcomes should meet the needs of students and society, ensuring the employment, personal development, and citizenship. We turn back now to learning competences. Student-centered degree programs should be designed in such a way that the learners will develop the particular mix of competences considered useful and necessary for academic, professional, or vocational area. That means that the verifiable results are described using learning outcomes and credits. So we have to reach that particular mix of competences with that learning outcome as a measuring tool. Learning outcomes state the extent and the level or standard of competence, including the knowledge that student will develop. What are we doing today with ECTS and ECTS credits is that the ECTS credit system has been introduced when in the 1980s, I suppose it was. And 1 credit, or the ECTS credits, reflect the amount of time a learner normally needs to achieve the predefined learning outcomes. To my experience, when I visited many universities in different parts of Europe, ECTS credits were mainly a tool for measuring the importance of the course of a certain professor. So having 6 credits in a year in an annual program of 60 credits was meaning that you had a very important course to teach. But that's not the real way of working. It has to be reflecting the student's workload that is needed to learn that content of your learning program. So assessment, which is leading to saying these credits are acquired or not acquired, that is on the basis of summative testing. And in that way, it is described in the theory on the ECTS credit system. But what we need in competence-based learning is not that much the summative testing, but formative testing. Just a continuous assessment very regularly in different steps during the course to coach, to make us able as a teacher to coach the student to reach the program aims. So summative testing, okay, that's at the end of the semester or at the end of the year to see where we are. But formative testing is the testing in continuous assessment to see how are we making advance in reaching our study goals. Practical benefits, I just mentioned a few. What we see is that in competence-based learning, you get motivated and engaged students. The learners have improved ability to recognize their own competences and evidence of learning. That's at the level of students. At the level of the teachers, we get a greater understanding of learning outcomes through the academic institutions. The courses, the learning resources, and the assessments are aligned to well-defined learning or teaching study goals. The outcomes-based framework for efficient and continuous improvement is important, but that is linked to the quality management of the institute. So these are some benefits at the level of students, but also at the level of the learning teachers. Practical problems regularly met. In fact, these are the same as we have seen for the online teaching and learning: inadequate professional knowledge or technical know-how, low teacher competence in instructional resource utilization, insufficient awareness of types of instructional materials, and so on and so on. At the level of the university organization, it's a lack of finance to acquire the instructional materials and a lack of opportunities for in-service training or refreshing courses. So we come back to the stakeholders of our higher education. It means the students, the academic staff, the teaching staff, and society, the professional environment surrounding the university. I will skip that. Some remarks on the stakeholders, the student as a learner. So competence-based learning is focusing on the learner as an individual for developing skills and to collaborate with others to collect evidence of learning. Very important, learners get the ownership of learning, learn at their own pace, and expand their lifelong learning pathways. So this is the preparation, practical preparation, looking towards the future where in a job you cannot stop learning. You always have continuous learning to stay, to not get behind knowledge and skills in your profession. Very important. Students should be involved in assessment of predefined competences set for the program, and for the learning units, assessment of the realized learning outcomes and competences, assessment of the teaching methods, and should be involved in the program review process. That is quite common in what we are doing in KU Leuven. We ask the students by the end of a course how they appreciated the course. Did we really reach the study goals, yes or no? Was the teaching methods satisfying? And these things are taken up in the quality management system, where students also are involved in the assessment of the teaching methods and in the review processes which are resulting from that assessment. I switch that. The stakeholder number 2, the university and the academic staff. Very important is that the academic staff is growing professionally as they articulate the learning outcomes in their areas of expertise. So they have valuable learning experiences and are developing new teaching strategies and new teaching methodologies. New teaching strategies, that means how our course is framed in the whole of the courses of the program. New teaching methodologies is giving access to, for example, computer-supported education. Okay, the rest is less important. So the conclusion of this all is that CPL is learning towards competences that has to see or to do with the society as a stakeholder. CPL is focusing on active learning, so that has to do with the learners as the partners in the system. CPL requires new pedagogical and methodical approaches. That's the faculty, not only the faculty staff, which are the teachers, but also the faculty organization. And then building new learning environment using the IT-supported electronic methods and techniques. That's the partner university management in the system. Conclusion. Main conclusion is that in CPL, learners turn to self-directed learning, which is needed afterwards for continuous learning in professional situations. Teachers need to switch from lecturing to coaching and tutoring. They need to understand and adopt new pedagogical concepts. And in earlier presentations, we already referred to Bloom's taxonomy to do these course development actions. They need to adapt the program design and the curriculum development and the course development, of course. And they need to master computed supporting teaching methods. That's part of our PRINTeL project. Very important, the university management shall provide support on all levels and shall provide the required resources, which is human resources, material, and training and retraining facilities. So active learning requires computer-supported methods and activating teaching and adapted course design by faculty. So I switch here from active learning to activating teaching. To get active learning in the mind of students, we have to switch to activating teaching. CBL and the relation to society. We also have to give society, it means the professional environment, a voice in the regular review of curricula. And they also have a role in the accreditation of our curricula. And that is the way our accreditation system today work, at least in our country here. I couldn't stop this presentation without giving you this reference to the work of Jace Hargis, who has published online a full overview of what you need to do to switch from face-to-face learning to online learning. And if you check out that publication, just spend some attention to Appendix D and E, where in Appendix D you have an online course assessment plan. And in Appendix E you have 75 e-learning activities. So that's a little bit what we wanted to tell you about competences. In what we will publish on the website, you have all literature references on which I have based this presentation. So please consult the website after this lecture. Thank you.
And we usually have the reflex or the immediate thoughts towards technology. But when it comes to teaching and learning, of course, we also think about didactics. Let me now share my PowerPoint presentation again. Let's see where it is here. Okay. And I will start from here. Okay. So in the rest of this session today, I would like to talk a bit about certain frameworks or concepts that we could use to sort of structure what we think about digital competences for teachers and also for students if there is time left today at the end of the session. And maybe one first framework I would like to show is something that looks maybe familiar to you. If those who were in Leuven might remember that we talked about the TPAC model. And maybe one of you would like to explain that model, what you remembered from what we have been saying here in Leuven about the TPAC model. If there is anyone who would like to tell about it, please raise your hand. You can do that by at the bottom of the page in the middle. There is 4 icons, and the very right one is someone raising his or her hand. If you would like to tell something here about what you remembered about the TPAC model, how it is, what it's all about, then please raise your hand. Then I can give the floor to you. Anyone? Don't be shy. Okay. Yeah. Someone, Saba says that it's the first time that she's seeing the TPAC model, but it looks clear. Yeah. Anyone else who would like to comment? Okay, for Salome as well. Okay, if no one else raises the hand, then maybe I should give an explanation. Thank you, Arushak, for pointing us to that resource. So the TPAC model is one model that explains when it comes to competences, and we reduce competences to knowledge here. That's only part of the competence. I think that yeah, Chris already mentioned in his talk this morning that competence is much broader than knowledge, but let's focus here in the TPAC model on knowledge. There is 3 types of knowledge that you need to have as a teacher in the digital age. Of course, as a teacher, you are the expert in the subject. You are the expert in, with regard to the content of the course you would like to give. So the C in TPAC model, that's quite obvious. You are teaching a course because that's your area, that's your research area, that's your domain of interest. You are the content expert. Okay, but as you are a teacher, you also need to have knowledge about the pedagogical aspects, about the didactics related to the contents. If you're a biology teacher, the ways that you need to teach biology, to teach the content of your course, is different from someone who is maybe in history or in law or in engineering. So the ways that you bring your content to the students is the pedagogical and didactic approach, and you need to know about how you bring that content in the best possible way to your students. And that is related, of course, to the competences that your students need to achieve in the end. The competences of a biologist are different from the competences of a historian, or different from the competences a lawyer need to have. Although there is common competences, generic competences that Chris was emphasizing this morning already, but you still need to think about what is the best way to bring that content to the students. So next to the content knowledge itself, you also need to know how to bring that content, which is the pedagogical knowledge that you bring into your course, let's say. And nowadays, because we are working in the digital age, in the digital world, we also need to have knowledge about the technology. What kind of technology can we use to bring that content in the best possible way to the students? Which means that you need to know something about, for instance, coming back to biologists again, you need to know how a microscope is working. You maybe need to know how an Excel sheet should be set up as a lab report for engineers, for instance. So you need also to have knowledge about the technology, the technological aids and technological tools, apps, whatever that you could use to bring the content in the best possible didactical way. And that is what we need to Yes, Arushak, I'm talking. Is there anyone else having a problem with hearing me? Okay, so I can just continue. It might be, Arushak, at your side that there is something wrong. Okay, good. So I continue. In the TPAC model, we have 3 types of knowledge that we need to master, so to say. The contents related, the pedagogical knowledge, but also the technology that is needed. And the whole idea of the TPAC model is that we try to find the overlap between the 3 circles, right? That we need to find the golden spot, let's say, in the middle of this diagram, where we bring in all the 3 different types of knowledge together in a way that is optimized for bringing certain content to the students and to develop their competences in their proper field in the discipline of which they are taking a program in. Of course, there is also the outer circle in the TPAC model here, which is the context. We should not forget that certain knowledge about the content, about the pedagogy, and about the technology should also be related to the context, the situation in which you're living and working. That means that, of course, the situation in Leuven differs from the situation in Yerevan, differs from the situation in Belarus, differs from the situation in Georgia. So there is something that we have to know about the context as well, and that we need to take into account. Okay. So we cannot deny that the world in which we are living, closer by, which I mean the local situation compared to the global situation, is also a component in the TPAC model. When we choose, let's say, the golden spot in the middle of the diagram, that will be very dependent on what's happening in your own situation. Okay, so that is the TPAC model. It's not a complete competence framework. As I said, it is focusing especially on the knowledge, which is only one aspect of the competences. But as a teacher, it also helps, I think, to keep it in mind. It's a very simple model, and it helps us to think about the 3 different components of the TPAC model. Okay. So that is one framework I would like to share with you. Another one that I would bring on the table here is one that is offered by JISC. JISC is an UK-based organization that is helping universities and higher education institutes in general with their ICT implementation, support, and whatever. Yeah, and of course, when you want to deliver such a support to teachers, to universities, to high schools or colleges, then you need also to think about what do we mean by at this moment the digital capabilities that you need to acquire, that you need to have. Okay, and they offered a schematic like is drawn here in the picture, where the ICT proficiency is in the middle. That is sort of, let's say, the binding factor for everything here in the picture. And they identify mainly 4 components when it comes to digital capability. It's about information, data, and media literacies. It's about digital creation, problem solving, and innovation. It's about digital communication, collaboration, and participation. And it's also about digital learning and development. And then the outer circle is digital identity and well-being. I come back to that later. Let's focus first maybe a little bit on the light green circle, information, data, and media literacies. Sometimes when we talk about digital competences, people talk about digital literacies. A literacy is something that you master, that and it comes from the fact that you can, let's say, read and write. That was the original meaning of literacy. When we translate that into the digital world, we talk about digital literacy, but it's not just being able to read and write in the digital world. It goes further than that. What we mean by digital literacy is that we could give meaning to what we are getting from the digital world. We could give meaning to information. So it's not just absorbing information that is offered through the web. It also gives us a possibility to well, maybe I should first talk about the data. It's not just data that we gather from the internet, prices for the goods, or maybe the data about the weather, the temperatures. We are able to interpret this data and to make it into information. So that is what is important here. We are able to get signals, to get data from the digital world, and to transform that for ourselves into valuable information. A bit similar is, or a special form of data is what we call media. There is a lot of media nowadays available on the internet. We can get the digital formats of the newspapers, but we can also get television channels online, even dedicated online channels with all sorts of news and media streams that are entering our daily lives. And being able to interpret these media, to deal with the media, and nowadays, especially in the pandemic, but also what's happening in the world, let's say, with a lot of fake news and conspiracy theories and all these kind of things, that is sort of overwhelming us, and we need to have a possibility to filter in all that information and data and media. What is important for us? What do we believe? What can we build on further? Where can we learn from? How do we do the research here? So that is one component of our digital capability, being capable to deal with what is offered in the online world. That's one thing. If we move to the next circle, the pink one, or the, what is it called, fuchsia one, where it said digital creation, problem solving, and innovation. It's not just absorbing data and knowing how to transform that into information or to deal with it, being literate with the interpreting this. It's also about contributing to the information that is put online. It has to do with creating own digital artifacts, and that might be in the context of teaching and learning. That might be that you're sharing your PowerPoints, maybe, or that you are dealing with technical issues, for instance, with the Mentimeter aspect, or the Mentimeter tool that we were using. It is, you are not just absorbing the data, but you are also contributing. You're also putting in or giving input for discussions, or bringing in your own thoughts in the digital world. So that is the second bubble, let's say, in the picture. So from literacy, being able to interpret and work with it, to also contribute. And then the next one, under it's the red one, it's called digital communication, collaboration, and participation. That goes a bit further on that, where we not only just contribute, just create things, but we also communicate with others. Needless to say that this is linked to whatever social media that we are familiar with at this moment. It is being able to participate in a Facebook group, maybe. It's being able to maybe write blogs or vlogs nowadays with video, where you are sharing your ideas with a larger public. Maybe you're also reacting on what others are writing. It has to do with communication. It has to do with networking. It has to do with collaborating. That's another dimension, even higher dimension, let's say, of the two previous ones. Okay, so it is me connected with the rest of the world. I'm contributing, yes, but I'm also listening and hearing what others are doing. I'm seeing what they are writing and posting, and I'm reacting to that. I'm able to formulate my opinion and to share that with others. making a larger community and being part of that large community. So that is the third aspect, the third dimension in digital capability. And then the fourth one here is called digital learning and development, the orange one, and that is then the let's say the ultimate step forward, where you say, okay, if I now take a step aside and I look back on what am I doing now, I'm interpreting, I'm literate with media, I'm even creating media myself, and I'm communicating, sharing this with others. But what have I learned from this? What can I now do for my own, let's say, personal, professional, academic development? So it's a sort of meta aspect of our digital capability, where you just look from the sideline, reflect on your own behavior in the digital world, and where you then try to learn, okay, maybe I'm lacking a skill to better use a certain tool, or I need to definitely learn how to apply Mentimeter in a course. So that is that sort of meta level where you reflect upon your own behavior, your own capacity, your own capability, your own competence, and that you then try to understand, okay, this is what I already know, there is a gap here, and I should take extra professional help, support, training, whatever needed to increase my digital capability. If we combine these four bubbles here, then we might say that we are proficient in the use of ICT. We feel proficient in the digital world, let's say. Okay. There is one extra bubble here, which is often forgotten, but which is very much important, and that is things that are related to digital identity and well-being. We should feel comfortable in that digital world. It's not just saying, okay, I feel ICT proficient now. I think that I'm digital capable of competent. No, you should be happy with that digital competence. That's an important aspect we should not forget for ourselves, but also for our students. So it means that we need to be very careful on what does it imply when we are behaving in that digital world? What does it have as an impact on me as a person? And also vice versa. If we contribute, for instance, in an online discussion, we should also keep in mind that the people we are sharing our messages with are also human beings, and that we need to be respectful with their meanings, with their ideas, with their thoughts, and that we should try to be, for instance, constructive in our feedback. It's very easy in an online world to see, and that's what's happening in Facebook groups, for instance, very easily. The threshold is very low. You just put your message and you do not think about how it will be interpreted by the other side. It's the same with students. If you give feedback in a face-to-face situation, that is totally different from a feedback given in a digital world. You do not see the body language, for instance. So you need to be very careful if you give that feedback to students in a digital format, that what you bring to the student is still accepted, and the student can still feel like comfortable with that feedback in a digital format. So we need to keep in mind digital personalities or personal characteristics, aspects, and try to understand that there is also the well-being factor that is important for yourself as a teacher when you get feedback from students, for instance. But vice versa also as a teacher to the students. So I think that that this is a very, well, it comes already closer to a comprehensive framework for digital competences when we include these 5 elements. Is that a bit clear to everyone? Could we understand that? So ICT proficiency or digital competence has to do with literacy of data, information, and media. Has to do with being able to create and to innovate. And next, we also communicate with others, collaborate, participate in the community, and we are able to reflect upon our behavior in the digital world. And then ultimately, we also respect the human beings in that digital world. Okay. If you want to read more about that, there is a reference in the slides. I'm not sure if we already mentioned that reference in the course resources. If not, you can always find it on the slide here. So no problem. Okay. The next slide is then when we focus a little bit more on digital literacies. That is the first bubble in the JISC framework. I already mentioned it has to do with data that we turn into information. So if we look at the left-hand side of this picture, there is information literacy, so we are able to interpret data and to make that into information, to share that, to share this information, to manage the information. That's one aspect of literacy. We also talked already about the media literacy, so we are able to find the media and to find articles or news items and to interpret this and to judge, to assess the value of these media. I think that this is an important aspect, especially also nowadays in teaching and learning. We also have to look for maybe YouTube videos that we would like to use in the class. Maybe we could also use movies online or whatever the tools or media items that could be useful. And we need to be able to not only find and select, but also present this media to the students. That's all included under media literacy. Communication and collaboration, we also touched that. So we are able to communicate and collaborate in an online world. And that's not only using email, that goes much further nowadays than that. By the way, I discovered recently with my students in a big course that I'm teaching with big classes, that students of the current generation of students doesn't want to use email anymore. They have other tools to communicate, and to just name a few, they have their own Facebook group related to the courses. They have their own WhatsApp groups in which they communicate. And so when I'm trying to let them use email to for instance make teams for project work, they were just looking and staring at me and saying, email? We are not using email for that. And so, okay, I had to learn that the official communication channel of the university, which is email, that this is no longer the preferred channel of our students. And if we want to reach out to the students, then we have to think about what kind of tool that we are proposing to them. So that's another part of our digital literacy as a teacher. I see that Nino agrees with me and says that this is the same in Georgia. So we might need to think about our official communication channels with students. Okay, there is also another part of digital literacy mentioned here, career and identity management. That's maybe, well, not so much related to us as a teacher, but as a teacher, we are also a researcher in the university and an expert in our domain. So we also need to think about how we profile ourselves in the digital world and how we think about our, let's say, digital identity and how people perceive our digital identity. Is that someone who is having a blog maybe where he or she is sharing the expertise they have? Is it someone that is having a very active Facebook group moderated? So there is a lot that you could think of yourself as a professional, how you could manage your own digital identity, and that's also part of your digital literacy. Okay. ICT literacy is another one. Okay, I mentioned it. It's mentioned here as separately because what is exactly meant here is that you are literate in using certain tools or that you at least know how to find solutions when you get stuck. Yeah, I'm not saying that you need to know 100 tools in full detail to feel like ICT literate. Not at all. I think that part of the ICT literacy as it is meant here also means that you're aware of all the tools that are available. You're professional enough to select, to assess the value of the tools and to select the proper one for your own purpose. Remember the TPAC model, and that you then can use it. And if you get stuck, that you know where to find support or how you could solve the problem. So that you not feel like uneasy with using tools in the class or in a training like this. That's part of the ICT literacy. Learning skills, that boils down to that aspect of meta cognition, about reflecting about what you are missing, where the gap is in your digital literacy, and how you could fill in the gap, where you can find extra support, where you can find training, where you can find others to help you. And again, that might be that you participate in a community. Yeah? I remember when I was a researcher long time ago, a PhD researcher, I mean, long time ago, there was the first, let's say, world where we were using mailing lists, and that you could subscribe to a mailing list where then you a mailing list around a certain topic, my research topic, and that you could share problems with other colleagues and that you were helping each other. Nowadays, there is plenty of opportunities where you could do that. So it's also about this, how to find the ways that you could improve your own skills, learning skills. Okay. And ultimately, then we come to digital scholarship. I will come back to that later with a specific framework that we developed about digital scholarship. But it is let's say, the ultimate goal. If you can apply all these aspects of digital literacies, if you feel comfortable with them, then you are actually building on your own digital scholarship. Okay. So that is something that I would like to share here as coming from JISC, what they do in the UK when they talk about digital capabilities and when they try to define digital literacies. They are all linked to digital competences, and I invite you to study them a bit more in detail and to link it also to what Chris has been saying this morning. Okay, I see a lot of activity in the chat, so people are rather agreeing or maybe not with what I was saying about emails I see, about Facebook groups. I will go through your reactions afterwards. Thank you. Okay, that was about JISC. If we now turn to another institution that I think that did quite substantial work on digital competences and in general, then I'm referring to the European Commission. The European Commission has developed two frameworks, and that is a digital competence framework, and that is a digital competence framework for educators. Let me first talk a little bit about the general digital competence framework. That is a framework that the European Commission has developed to structure a little bit what they mean by digital competences and what they think that every European citizen should have as new competences for the future, let's say. Okay. And they defined like 5 areas in which they also identified 21 competences related to the digital competence framework. Let me go through them one by one. Again, not surprising, the European Commission also talks about information and data literacy. And in this slide and the next coming slides, these are the 5 areas and the 21 competences that they mentioned. So it is about being able to find data, browsing, searching, filtering data and information. It is being able to evaluate the data, to assess the value of the data, let's say, and also to manage the data. Maybe archive them, maybe neglect them, maybe use them to a certain point, maybe share them in one or another way. Yeah, so that is what they call information and data literacy. The next one is communication and collaboration. We already talked about that as well. So what they say here is it's about interacting, it's about sharing. It's about engaging in the digital world. It's being involved in the digital movement, let's say. It's also about collaborating, and it's about netiquette. That's a word that, sometimes is forgotten. But I remember in the very early stages of the internet that there was a lot talked about netiquette, the way we behave on the internet, the way that we present ourselves in the digital world. That is, coming back to what I said about the well-being factor and the digital identity, which is then also mentioned here on the slide. It is the way that we present ourselves as a person, as a professional, as an academic, as a teacher, as a researcher in the digital world, and how we respect the relation with, for instance, students, how we respect the relation with our peers, how we respect the relation with external stakeholders, parties involved in university work. So that's the second area of digital competences, all about communication and collaboration. That's the third one, and I repeat what JISC was saying here. It's about digital content creation. That's another area. So next to information, next to creation, next to, what did I say? Next to communication and collaboration, there is also the creation factor. So we are able to develop our own digital content. I remember a long time ago, for instance, in the medical faculty in our university, professors in the medical faculty, they had a lot of pictures that they wanted to show with their students. That was then transformed into slides that they were beaming in an auditorium. And then all of a sudden PowerPoint came. And so then they were getting lost at that moment. They didn't know how to transfer all these slides into a PowerPoint presentation. And I remember that at that time, some of the professors were just asking their secretary to make scans of the slides and to put that in their PowerPoint presentations. That was a long time ago. Nowadays, we simply assume that we are able to make our own pictures, put them in a PowerPoint, and present the PowerPoint in whatever digital format, either online or in a classroom or whatever. Yeah. So being able to create your own digital content and to integrate that digital content, for instance, in a presentation, in a lecture, maybe to find other digital content that you could reuse in your presentation, and how to share your own presentation then. That's another part of that digital content creation area. We need also to talk about copyright and licenses here. If you're using others' work, it's in a digital world, it's not that much different from what we are used to in the, let's say, traditional world, offline world, where we were maybe quoting certain resources you can find in the library, or quoting authors and quoting scientific papers, whatever. In the digital world, there is also rules about copyrights and licenses, and we need to be aware how to do that properly, how we could refer to others' work. For instance, by mentioning web links in your PowerPoint slides is quite important. If you show a picture, that you also put a copyright there, if there is any copyright. Or that when you are sharing your own resources, maybe you are using something like Creative Commons, so that others could reuse your work. Okay. So that's all about digital content creation, the third domain. We also need, and that hasn't been covered by others yet, when we talk about digital, well, a little bit, but more explicitly, it's mentioned here in the framework by the European Commission, and that's anything that has to do with safety. We need to be able to use we need to be able to protect ourselves in the digital world. And protect means that, for instance, we need to protect our devices. If we lose our smartphone, we know that there is a huge database on your smartphone with all your contact addresses, maybe all your emails, all your chats. If you lose your device, then we sometimes forget that others might find it and might abuse what they can find on your smartphone. Okay, it needs maybe a little bit of expertise to find the data on your smartphone, but I'm sure that, that there is a lot that people can find on a lost smartphone. If you are a bit of a specialist, you can easily overcome hurdles like passwords and so on. But we need to know how we could better make our devices safer, and so that we also protect our data and privacy in that on these devices. Okay, so that's about the protection of the, let's say, the hardware and software. But it goes a bit further. When we talk about safety, we should also think about the health and well-being, and how to protect that, how to make sure that our students, for instance, feel safe enough in the online environment, that they feel like invited to participate in the digital environment, because it's for them a safe learning environment. So that's also something we need to keep in mind, that let's say the digital mental health is very important, and how can we protect that for ourselves but also for others. And then, okay, The last one here is about sustainability. That's another buzzword nowadays. We need to think about how we can protect the environment. That means that in the digital world, we also need to think about how we could dispose of our digital devices at a certain point. I don't know in your situation. In my university, we use, for instance, laptops for 5 years, and then we are expected to buy a new one. But what happens then with these devices? Where do we reuse them, or where do we send them to, or what do we do with these devices? Is there maybe a second life for these devices? Can we share it maybe with, I don't know, I do know that there is a program in our university and in many other Flemish universities where we sort of try to collect second-hand laptops and that we try to refurbish them so that there is a proper operational functioning of these laptops, and we also install appropriate software on it, and then we are using it, for instance, in our development cooperation projects in African countries or in Latin America, for instance. So we need to think about that aspect as well in a digital world if we want to consider ourselves as digital competent. Okay. And then the last one here, I think, yeah, and that's about problem solving. I already mentioned that we should feel, well, not happy enough to solve problems, but we should not be afraid of turning into some problems when we are working in the digital world. It might be that the internet connection is not working. It might be that the software is having a bug or something like that. Maybe your participants in the course are having problems with their accessibility to the resources. We need to feel knowledgeable enough to, in such a situation, to identify the problem, but also to solve the problem, or at least to know where to find a solution. Yeah, and then ultimately that also means that if certain problems iterate and come back at several times for yourself or for your students, that you need to identify these gaps, but that you also find ways to jump over these gaps and to find ways that the gap is sort of filled, and that you can overcome this with maybe workarounds or bypasses or I don't know what, but that you can easily help each other with finding ways out of the problems. Okay. So that was the framework that the European Commission has with regard to digital competences in general. What they then also say is that, okay, if we have that framework of digital competences, then how do we make our citizens more digital competent? How can we make sure that this is not just something that is far beyond the let's say the heads of European citizens. We need to think about how can we help the European citizen to grow into digital competency. And the metaphor they are using for that is how to learn to swim. So I apologize, it's a bit unclear here on the picture, but the main picture is that of someone who is learning to swim. What does that mean? It is something that okay, in the beginning, when you, I don't know if you still remember when you were learning to swim, you were sort of exercising the movements in a very safe environment, which was outside the swimming pool. Okay, So you're trying to understand what kind of movements you need to do with your arms, with your legs, and you do that outside the swimming pool, which means that you do that in a safe environment, similar to digital competency. The first step might be that you do it in a very constrained situation where there is no danger that you could fail. Yeah, but you are trying to do the necessary steps, the necessary movements, skills, tools, applications you want to use, and that you try it out in a very safe environment. And then you are going into the swimming pool, and there will be a trainer there. There will be you go into the less deeper part of the swimming pool, where you then also exercise the movements with a bit of guidance, still in a safe environment. It's a bit less safe than outside the swimming pool, of course, because you need to try to do the exercise in the water, of course, and that is what you then try to do. You further exercise the movements in the less deeper water with the help of a trainer. And that is also with digital competences what you could do. You could try it out in a very safe environment, but first steps with a little bit help of someone who is a bit more knowledgeable, who is guiding you in the water. Okay, and then once you feel comfortable with the help of the trainer and what is it called, the swimming band, then you go in a bit deeper water. You do it maybe on yourself, still knowing that the trainer is there somewhere behind, that you can always escape from the water because it's not that deep yet. So you are exercising and you're getting better and better. You are doing a bit more. You are challenging yourself a little bit, but you still know that there is someone that could help you to escape when you get into trouble. And gradually you're improving, you are exercising, you're getting better, you feel more comfortable, and you are exploring the swimming pool in the deeper waters. And finally, when you feel really comfortable, you go into the deepest part of the swimming pool. You're starting to dive into the swimming pool. You are not scared anymore from whatever problem that might be encountered. You even don't need a trainer. Well, maybe there is someone along the swimming pool that could rescue you in case you are getting in deep problems. But you manage to find your way and to really enjoy what you're doing in the swimming pool. That is what is symbolized here when they say that becoming digital competent is a bit comparable to learning to swim. From a very safe environment, sort of dry run of literally then of what you need to do, up to diving in the deepest, call it ocean of digital of the digital world. Okay, I see that you many of you like the metaphor, and I think that throwing someone in the deepest part of the water immediately, that's a guarantee to be drawn. So I don't want you to do that. Take the gradual steps and learn it step by step with very much help in the beginning. If you feel unsure, if you feel uncertain, if you feel uncomfortable, and then gradually improve your skills and continue exercising, explore, and try to always know that there is someone that might rescue you when you get into troubles, but then really enjoy when you are feeling like a fish in the water, let's say. That's an expression in Dutch. I don't know how it sounds in English, but it is something like that metaphor that the European Commission wanted us to have in mind when we are growing in digital competences. Okay. I see smileys in the how to learn to swim is the most important and actual question. That's true indeed. But I think that the metaphor can speak for itself, and that we could also keep it in mind for ourselves, and remembering how we learned to swim, and try to transform that process into something that we could use in our journey as a digital competent professional academic, and also helping the students how to learn to swim. Because at that moment, as a teacher, don't forget, you will become the trainer. You will be the one that is helping the student to learn to swim. Yeah. So that is what we could, as a metaphor, keep in mind talking about growing in competences. Okay, I see that people are asking for the presentations. Yes, we will upload the presentations afterwards, so you will have them. Don't worry, and then you can redigest what we were talking about. Okay, enough about swimming. Let's go back to the European Commission, because they wanted to go one step further. I just presented the digital competence framework in general. That is a sort of framework that could apply to any citizen in Europe and beyond, actually. But they also try to, well, I would have said to translate it to teaching and learning, but that's maybe not the right word. They also made a version of that digital competence framework, which was typically addressing what is happening in teaching and learning. And so it's similar framework with the slightly different words, and it is also reflecting the things that Chris was mentioning this morning, and what we were discussing so far here. Yeah, so and maybe I can give a few words of explanation on this picture here, and that is like I said, the digital competence framework for educators. Again, the reference is mentioned on the slide. Mainly, it considers well, different parts, let's say, and that is coming back to what Chris said this morning. If you look at the lower part of the picture, there it's mentioned subject-specific competences. Yeah, that is what Chris also mentioned, the domain-specific competences. The upper half of the picture more reflects the digital competences specifically, and the transversal competences, which are also having a digital component, let's say. So they are less subject specific, but they are broader, more generic, and they are more related to the digital aspect. So that is the upper part of the picture. And next to that, there is also three bubbles here in the picture. In the middle, it has to do with the pedagogical competences of the teacher. Okay, and what do we mean by pedagogical competences? Remember the TPAC model. There is one aspect, and that's number 2 here in the picture: digital resources. We need to be able to either find and reuse digital resources for learning resources or tools. So that is one aspect. We need to be able to find them, to select them, to adapt them. Or maybe if we don't find them, we also need to create them. Okay, so it might be that you do not find good slides, or that you do not could find a good picture or a good movie to show, and then maybe you have to make it yourself. Yeah, but in many cases you can find something useful somewhere in the digital world. So that's one aspect. You need to be able to work with these digital resources. Number 3 in the picture is teaching and learning. Yeah, that is clear what we mean by in the TPAC model. We already emphasized it. It's important that you know how to bring your knowledge, your contents in the digital world. It's put here on top, so that means that it is in a a skill that is much related to the digital world. You need to know as a teacher, as a researcher, as an academic in general, how to teach your subject. And that could be in a face-to-face situation, yes, but especially nowadays, we need to be able to identify the best pedagogical didactical approaches in a blended environment or in a fully online environment like we are facing here with this training nowadays. Okay, so that is number 3. Number 4 is then mentioned below, and that is assessment. Okay, although we will discuss that tomorrow more in detail, I would like to say a few words here, and that is related to what Chris mentioned this morning. We define digital competences or competences in general, especially when it's in the lower part here of the picture. We need to define the learning outcomes, the competences that are subject specific. And we want to assess the students in terms of how much, how large they have acquired these new competences. So we need to be able to evaluate the students. Might be during the process, then it's formative assessment, might be at the end of the learning process, and then we talk about formative assessment. Again, that has a link with digital competences because we are also talking about assessment in the digital world. But more about that tomorrow. Number 5 here is mentioned empowering learners. Remember what Chris was saying this morning? He was also saying that as a teacher, you are a performer. Yeah, you are well, he didn't say, or I can't remember. He used the word. You need to be an actor. Yeah, you need to entertain your students in a way. Yeah, so you need to be someone who is engaging the students, someone who is getting enthusiasm with the students and is helping the students, is coaching the students, is guiding the students through the learning process, through the learning activities, helping the students, supporting them, empowering them to be able to achieve the goals of the training. Okay, so that is another aspect, another skill, another part of the competences that as an educator you need to develop. How to do that? You need to do that in the face-to-face world, of course, and some of us are better in that than others, no doubt about this, but you also need to do that in the digital world. And that might be slightly different, and we might see that people who are maybe not so, let's say, vocal or do not like to be an actor in the classroom, that they can be very engaging in an online environment, and that they can really help students with in a digital way, with giving them feedback, proper feedback, with helping them, supporting them in a very kind and safe way, let's say, yeah, and vice versa. Some people are absolutely not keen on being or are very good actors in a live situation, but do not want to or do not have the skills or competences in the digital world to do the same. So again, that's part of the digital competence framework. We need to pay attention to that aspect, how to empower the students, the learners. Okay. So that's the core of the digital competence framework for educators. It's in the middle of the picture here. And then there is the 2 outer circles where we, at the left-hand side, also need to think about our own professional competences, which means that we need to know as a professional how to use the tools. Remember the TPAC model. Next to the pedagogical aspects, we just need to know the tools as well, and how to use the tools, the features of the tools, or the infrastructure, or the software we are using. Yeah, so that is something that we also need to keep in mind. If you want to exploit the full potential of certain applications, you need to be skilled in using the application. So you need to know the whistles and the bells, and you need to know what kind of features you need for your particular environment. And you need to work on that. Yeah. Remember what I said about the PowerPoint and the medical professors and their secretaries. Nowadays, we just expect that everyone knows how to make a PowerPoint presentation. So that's a skill that you need to develop, and it's part of your professional development, let's say. That is the left-hand side of the picture. The right-hand side of the picture is then focusing a bit more on learners' competences. Remember what I said about swimming. We need to learn to swim, and when we can swim, we can also teach it to others to learn. So that means that we are, as a swimmer, an experienced swimmer, we can become the trainers of new swimmers. Yeah. So we also, in our digital competence development, we also need to learn how we could teach others how they can develop in their digital competences. And in our situation as teachers, that means we need to learn to teach our students how to learn to become more and more digitally proficient. Yeah, so we also need to have the skills ourselves to transfer what we know to our students and help them to develop in their digital competences. Okay, so that is the digital competence framework for educators as developed by the European Commission. Any questions, or is that clear? I do not see any comments in the chat, so I guess I can continue. Okay. And then finally, I would like to present this framework. It's a framework I developed together with colleagues from the University of Stellenbosch in South Africa, where we also were thinking about digital competences and how you could describe that in one picture. Putting the, let's say, the digital scholar as the term that we would like to use to talk about digital competences in our academic work. Why to use the term scholar? Because that goes a little bit further than simply academic stuff. There is nowadays a lot of people involved in the educational process in teaching and learning. It's not only the professors that are developing their digital competences, but we're also talking about teaching staff, support staff, instructional designers, and they are also part of let's say the whole picture, and they also need to develop their own digital competences to share it in a teaching team, which is important, I think, nowadays in an online world. Okay, having said that, what do we see in this picture? At the outer circle, you see let's say the three main pillars of what is happening in a university. If we are in an academic world, in the digital academic world, we need to focus on our teaching, we need to focus on our research, we need to focus on our community service, service to the community, let's say. Yeah, that's the work of an academic nowadays, and this happens in a digital world. So we need to well, always keep in mind that whatever we do, it is related to these three pillars of the mission of a university, of a higher education institute in general. Yeah, they are a sort of turning wheel. That means that they go around and around, and they interlink with all the other aspects mentioned in the picture that I will explain next. Okay. In the blue circles, you see something in the middle, which is yourself, and it goes to, at the outer circle, to the global world. Yeah. And that is symbolizing different layers of, well, what you could maybe call a digital identity. Okay, it has to do with you as a person need to know about your position in that digital framework. You are in the middle of, let's say, what is happening here in this this framework. That is your yourself, how you are in the digital world. But we should also remember, and then comes in the community building, comes in the collaboration, the participation, and so on. You are not alone in that digital world. You're a member of a team. That could be the teaching staff, like I said. The teaching teams is nowadays quite common in universities, higher education, but also even in primary and secondary education. I'm involved in a project with primary and secondary schools now, and they are really working with what they call teaching design teams. So there is a lot of collaboration with direct colleagues, let's say, immediate colleagues in your circle, let's call it, which is your team. And these teaching the design teams or teacher teams, they belong to an institution that has its own rules, its own, let's say, digital identity. Some schools profile themselves more in the digital world than others. Some are completely online, or especially now in the pandemic, they just want to profile as, look what we can do. We immediately shifted to a complete online university. Some others will continue like that. Some others, probably mine as well, we will try to find a new balance where there is a bit of face-to-face and a bit of digital included in the teaching and learning. So that is another part of your digital identity, yourself, your team, your institution. And then comes the two outer circles. Of course, your university is not an ivory tower, it's part of a society. It has links with direct stakeholders involved in the society, the community, the local region, let's say. And that is part of yeah, again, there you need to know how to use the digital tools for engaging with that society. For instance, in Leuven, there is a lot to do nowadays about what is called service learning, where we try to involve students in real life projects in society linked to the university, where they can also explore the digital possibilities. For instance, digital portfolios are used to follow what they are doing in that service learning community. We will come back to that tomorrow. And then ultimately, the outer circle is the global world. I was emphasizing with society or local community, close to the university, let's say. But with all the digital tools nowadays, it's very easy to connect with the rest of the world. Yeah. So we also need to think about how do we link what we are doing in our university to the not just the outside world around the university, but position ourselves in a global world and being connected with the rest of the world. So as a digital scholar, we have to grow in our digital competences from what we need to do or what we want to do ourselves as a person, as an individual, but linked to peers, a bigger university community, a societal community, the global community. So that's another dimension of your digital competence, feeling comfortable in all these blue circles, let's say, and link them together. And then there is a third dimension that we also have put in this picture. And that starts from the top, where we say it's the pies in the pizza that you see here. On the top, you see the author. And then next to that, if we turn clockwise, there is the storyteller, there is the creator, there is the integrator, there is the networker. Okay, what do we mean by that? Digital competence also includes the way that you, as an author, are communicating about your own work. It's a bit less linked to teaching, and it's a bit more linked to research here. We need to get used to the new ways of communicating about our research as an author. Normally, we do that in peer-reviewed journals. Which is still the most important way of communicating about your own research. That's true. But we need to be aware that there is new digital ways of producing this outcome, this research outcome. Okay, that means that we need to think about, for instance, open journals and how to communicate about our research in the open world. How do we do that? Especially now with the pandemic, there is still pressure to do the peer review of articles published in scientific journals. Of course, that's an important step, but we also want to share our results with as much people as possible. And immediately, so that we know the latest news about what's happening in the pandemic. So we also need to be aware of what are the mechanisms here that we could use, what are the tools that we could use, what is a safe environment here. So that all comes together under that that piece in the pie about authorship. Storytelling is the next part. That means that we are not just publishing our research and then leave it in the journal or leave it on the shelf. We are also really want to tell a story, and telling a story means that you want to get your audience involved in the subject. That means that we want the audience to be enthusiastic about your story. So you need to be able to bring your story to the audience in such a way that they get interested in what you're telling, more than just having it published in a journal which you then can retrieve online and so on. So the whole issue of bringing a story is important here. It's something like a bedtime story, where you're reading a book to your child before sleeping. That is one way of telling a story. I'm not saying that we should here do that in teaching and learning, that people fall asleep. That's not what I mean here. But you need to tell a story so that the student in this case, is getting interested in what you're saying. Storytelling is one thing. Digital storytelling is part of that. We also need to become a creator. We realize that it's not just written words, it's not just a story, it should also be visualized. We are living in a media-rich world nowadays with video, audio, graphics, infographics, and stories. And we need to be able to create that and to create these resources, these digital objects, these digital artifacts. Also for teaching, also for research. So that is the next part in the pie. Integrator means that we have a story, we have resources, video, audiovisual, multimedia things. We have to bring that together. We have to integrate that into something that, call it a package that the reader or the listener can absorb, can digest, something that is comprehensive, is attractive, and that people can say, yeah, that's something where I can find my way through and learn new things. So that is integrator. And finally, the networker comes in. So that is the part where you are collaborating, cooperating, participating, sharing, networking with others, where you're really part of a community where you feel happy to really share what you have and to share your digital competences with others. Okay, so that's another way of bringing together different dimensions, digital competences that we need to develop as a teacher. Does that mean that we have to move around in this picture? Yes. I think that's the way to interpret this picture. We need to move around. Could be the arrows from teaching, research, service mentioned in the picture. It could be dwelling around over the different circles, the blue circles, from thinking about what is my position here, up to how do I link with the global world, and move between these circles in a fluent way. And then the other aspects from author to networker. I'm not saying that you should start as an author and that you then should become a storyteller and then a creator. That's not the idea of the picture here. It is for certain aspects of your work, it's perfectly okay to just be an author and publish your work in peer-reviewed journals. But for other aspects of your work and you're being a teacher, or being a researcher, you might be able or you need to be able to create an artifact that could contribute to the general knowledge of society, to the benefit of society, let's say. And so moving around in this picture is what I consider as growing in digital competences. And that's the end of my presentation here. I would like to share just one thing, if you allow me. Let's see if I can show it to you. Oops, I don't find it here. I thought I had something to show you. Okay, that was what I wanted to show. Can I not show this to you? Microsoft Edge tab. Here, this one. Do you see this now? Okay, this is what I wanted to show you to finish this. We are writing a book together with my colleagues in Stellenbosch about evolving as a digital scholar, and especially about that framework. We are heavily writing at this moment, and we hope to publish the book right after summer. It will be an open access book. So you can download it for free afterwards, and that will explain a bit more in detail the different aspects of a digital scholar and how to evolve as a digital scholar. So it's just a bit of advertisement that I would have that I like to do here. Okay. So I think that we are coming to the end of this session, and I just would like to see if there are any questions that are left in the chat. Any thoughts that you would like to share, or things that you think that is not clear that you would like to discuss tomorrow? Okay. I do not see any particular questions. It was a pleasure then for us. I think I can say that in the name of Chris and Wouter as well, to have you here today with us. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope you learned something. Try already to think a little bit about what the concepts and the things that we have been discussing today, how that could be applied to your own situation, to yourself as a digital scholar or digital teacher, and try to already think a little bit how you could maybe include that in the way that you would improve your own courses, your own teaching and learning processes, activities. Yeah, and if we could then continue tomorrow, like I said, we will much more focus on assessment tomorrow. We start again at the same time, but it will be a different link for tomorrow. Have a look at the course website and take the link for day 2. And I wish you then a nice afternoon, good evening, and see you tomorrow morning.